Years ago, I read that certain Native American communities held their most sacred objects in common, but that many of them were passed on temporarily into the keeping of one person or another in the community, that it was an honor to be asked to be the keeper of the object for a while. And you knew also that in time, there would come the moment when you too would need to pass it on to someone else for the honor and the responsibility of keeping it. Never, though, was ownership in question. The objects were beyond ownership, like everything else of greatest value: nation, earth, air. So one Sunday I started an experiment. I bought a silk tie, the most beautiful, luxurious one I could find, and I brought a hand-woven scarf I had fell in love with in India and waited to give as a gift to someone, but not yet given away. And I wrapped them up, and I wrote up some rules. You had to wear it at least twice in the intervening week. And if someone complimented you or asked you about it, you had to explain what we were in the midst of as an experiment in our community. And the next week, you needed to bring the gift wrapped again, as it had been for you, in paper or in a beautiful bag to give to someone else in the community during worship with the same instructions. The whole effort, of course, was trying to uproot the notion of ownership, to see how it felt to do this countercultural thing. Could something be lovely and just in your hands for a short while? Was ownership a healthy idea? Was it true that something in common would not be treated well? The same purported truth or lore that's being used, I think, right now to dismantle the commons of government or justify it, of education, of healthcare, of protection and care for the natural world and parks. Is private ownership the best way to care for common goods? I think we know the answer. Privatization in a capitalist economy is about extraction, profit, return on investment. Clear-cutting old redwood forests is likely profitable. But the loss of a mature ecosystem and the severing of the lungs of the land is a loss to the common good for private gain. There's no larger wisdom that plays out in that kind of math. Wall Kimmerer, the professor of botany, the writer we heard from this morning, member of the Potawatomi Nation, which is one of the Anishinaabe peoples of the Great Lakes region. In her newest book, The Serviceberry, Abundance and Reciprocity in the Natural World, she uses the serviceberry to bring us back to the truths about how we're meant to be in relationship to resources, to each other, and to life. The economy that nature teaches us. Kimmerer begins her reflection when her neighbors, Polly and Ed Drexler, the ones to whom she dedicates the book, invite her over to come pick berries on their property. The Drexlers had planted serviceberries in their small working farm, but locals aren't yet aware of the deliciousness of the serviceberry, and the harvest is huge. And so Polly and Ed do, well, what the berry does. They give away what they have, profligately. Putting the berries in her mouth and in her bucket, Kimmerer reflects, you could call them natural resources or ecosystem services, but the robins and I know them as gifts. We both sing gratitude with our mouths full. The botanist professor in Kimmerer points out to the reader that service berries actually have a lot of different names: Saskatoon, Juneberry, Shadbush, Shadblow, Sugarplum, Sarvis. Ethnobotanists, she writes, know that the more names a plant has, the greater is its cultural importance. This tree, it's beloved for its fruits, for its medicinal use, and for the early froth of flowers that whiten the woodland edges at the first hint of spring, she writes. Serviceberry, she tells us, is known as a calendar plant. So faithful is it to the seasonal weather patterns. Its bloom is a sign that the ground has thawed. In this folklore, this was the time that the mountain roads became passable for circuit preachers who arrived to lead church services. It's also a reliable indicator to fisher folks that the shad are running upstream. Buried in the language of her people, Kimmerer shows us also a deeper understanding of this berry and how it orients us and our place in the world. The word in Potawatomi, she says, for service berries is bozakmin. It's a superlative. It means the best of the berries. Tasting one, she agrees. But she reflects the word bozakmin has in its root the word min, the phrase min, a root word for berry in her language. Strawberry, raspberry, even the word for apple actually has min in the name. But min, she also tells us, is also the root for the word gift. Anishinaabe linguist James Vukolich writes, these plants are a manifestation of unconditional love that plants have for people. Plants offer whatever they have to whoever needs it, he writes. Seeing and naming them as gifts, literally naming them as gifts, changes things a bit. In the Anishinaabe world, in fact, everything is understood as a gift in the natural world. Quote, when we speak of these things, we don't speak of them as natural resources or commodities, Kimmerer writes. Our whole relationship to the natural world changes because of that. We enter the world not of economic exchange, not transactions, but a gift economy. This is a world where one receives generously and then feels intuitively gratitude, is moved immediately to the joy of sharing and reciprocity, not as some ritual of manners, Kimmerer writes, but as a recognition of how your life is contingent on the life of another in a huge web of belonging and service. Kimmerer points out how this framing of our relationship to life's resources and each other is natural, how it shows up everywhere. All around us are signs, she writes, of us knowing of reciprocity and of the natural laws of sharing and gratitude and belonging. Like all those little free libraries in our neighborhoods. Like all the websites and apps where we take what's extra that we have and rather than sell it, we give it away to whoever needs it, to spare the earth, an additional extraction, to bless others with our abundance, to stop treating everything as disposable because somehow that doesn't sit right with us, hurts our souls. It shows up when we bring a neighbor a meal because we hear they're sick, and they share the lemons on their tree, and we pull out their garbage cans when we notice they've overslept. We know this economy of gifts and belonging, don't we? And that's not minor, Kimmerer writes, because, quote, what we crave is not trickle-down, faceless profits, but reciprocal face-to-face relationships, which are naturally abundant but made scarce in the anonymity of large-scale economics. We want flow and a sense that we're caught in this web of enough, can trust one another and hold one another. Not that we need to amass and hoard so much, build walls. Be like that cartoon character. Do you remember him? He was like, mine, 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 mine. I'm the wealthy miser. Does anyone remember this cartoon character? Oh my God, he lives in my head sometimes. We want to be alive and in motion, don't we? Like that sweet berry she describes, all of them, that fruit that feeds whoever needs to be fed and trusts that their seeds will get spread and that the ground will be nourished again with rain and sun and by other plants and animals, interconnected and generative and generous and abundant in motion. What most of us really want, she says, is a sense of belonging and relationship and purpose and beauty, which can never be commoditized. I want to be part of a system, she says, in which wealth means having enough to share, and where the currency of exchange is gratitude and the infinite renewable resource of kindness, which multiplies every time it's shared rather than depreciating with use. What if, Kimmerer writes, what if scarcity is a cultural construct, a fiction that fences us off from a better way of life? I'm so sure all of us would be happiest if we were liberated to be more in the world the way she describes. I know I'd sleep easier, and I would trade a smaller bank account for a world of more safety nets and things held in common, more shared resources and promises of mutual care, not more privatization. I trust that when things are shared, there is more than enough to go around. And I don't need to see the math. I'd prefer belonging and mutuality, not competition, but connection. I crave it. If you and I can't take it with us, why in the world would we spend our lives hoarding and protecting ours and letting others suffer? It makes no sense, not logically and not in the language of the heart and the soul or whatever you want to call that deepest part of ourselves. The serviceberry gives it away every year. But it's a hard way to live in our world. So I want to confess something. I prepared myself. I realized that this year there was so much fear and so much, I'm going to try not to cry, so much, I'm going to think about baseball as I say this, so much fear and so much anxiety with prices going high and the world off its rocker, at least our part of the world especially, that people would constrict. And even though that this is just when we needed to stay together and connected, that I was ready to love all of us through this time, that I would understand if we got protective and scared and tight. Why wouldn't we? And I went away for a week last week on vacation, and I came back ready to hold what would feel hard, and I was wrong. Because when I came back, I found out that among other things, the pledges that had come in the week while I was gone, that they made our pledge levels higher in the number of pledges received than the previous year when everything was rosy. And that though we asked people to give 5 or 10% more, that the increase was closer to 17 or 20%. I am 30 years in the ministry, in some very healthy congregations with very generous people, and I have never seen that happen. And visitors are pledging. A dozen of you, more than a dozen of you, who are just visiting have pledged. And please don't get me wrong, we have a long way to go. You'll hear a little more from Harry and Miriam. And those who haven't given, I suppose you could really mess this up. And that would stink. But I am holding so much joy and hope that we are refusing to be the worst of what the world is baiting us to be. And I want to thank you for that. And in the midst of it all, Oriana boldly stood up and she talked as an 8th grader, right? She's in 8th grade? 9th grade? 10th grader, 9th grade. Still, you know, a young person. About period poverty, and some of you were so moved because it was so courageous to talk about something that's been, well, a taboo subject. And we raised $1,300 that week when we were asking you to pledge. And it isn't just money. Look around, keep your eyes open. It's everywhere. This is the gift economy, a piece of it. You all, you give your time and your talents and your treasures every week. That's how this place works. In the language and the flow of gifts. Can we imagine a human economy with the currency which emulates the flow from Mother Earth, Kimmerer writes, a currency of gifts? I think we can. In Sacred Economics, Charles Eisenstein reflects on ecosystems and writes, in nature, headlong growth and all-out competition are features of immature ecosystems, followed by complex interdependency, symbiosis, cooperation, and the cycling of resources. The next stage of the human economy will parallel what we are beginning to understand about nature. It will call forth the gifts of each of us. It will emphasize cooperation over competition. It will encourage circulation over hoarding, and it will be cyclical, not linear. Money may not disappear anytime soon, he writes, but it will just serve a diminished role even as it takes on more of the properties of the gift. The economy will shrink, and our lives will grow. Thank you all for the safe harbor that we make together, with our gifts of self and trust in shared ventures, and the beauty and power of what is held in common for a world of trust and gratitude and reciprocity and flow. And before I end, I want to tell one more story. You know that experiment of the tie and the scarf? Well, shortly into it, a woman made an appointment to see me. We had recently done the memorial service of her teenage daughter who had died. The girl's two best friends had flanked the mother like a protective guard that day, in an image I will never get out of my head. The mother said she'd made 3 infinity scarves that winter out of the softest wool for the 3 girls, but she'd never had a chance to give them before her daughter died. And that week, she'd given her daughter's friends theirs. But she had this third one, her daughter's, and it felt so sacred, and it felt meant to be used. And she asked if we could put that scarf into circulation too, that whoever needed to feel loved or warm or cared for could keep it for a while and then bring it back. It would be held in common, it would be shared, she said. As you said, the most sacred things are. It would be a gift in motion, blessing the world, as her daughter had been. May we live in the truth of the gift economy. Generous, trusting, profligate, like the service berry offering itself to whoever needs it, like the best of our own lives, like the best of what we make together, rich in gratitude, in reciprocity, in mutual care and responsibility. What if scarcity is just a cultural construct, Kimmerer asks, a fiction that fences us off from a better way of life? What if? Thank you all. I love you. Bless you. Amen.